I am very thoughtful about every single word I put out into social media.
Hmm.
It wasn't always, but it's certainly the way I am now. When
Yeah.
when social media was new, I was exactly that person who was commenting and saying things without thinking about the impact of those words. Would I say this to a person's face? And that was exactly where I got to was I said, would I say this to a person's face?
Hmm.
And if I wouldn't say it to their face, I'm not putting it on social media.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this conversation on social media is horrible on both sides. Everyone's guilty here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Yollab Central. Today, I have with me Michael. So, Michael, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about this conversation today?
Oh, well, I mean, other than just because it's me, um, I think I think, DJ, we are at an interesting point in life
Hmm.
where there is so much change happening, and some of that change is good and some of that's bad. And we are figuring out as a society kind of what we want to be when we grow up.
Yeah.
And I think that's an incredibly exciting time to be having conversations like this.
Hmm. Okay. So now I could interpret what we want to be when we grow up in multiple
Mhm.
forms, right? As a profession or career profession. That's usually what children are asked, right? But then there's
Yeah.
so many things attached to it. There's an identity, personal identities, relationships, so many more things. So, what is it that you specifically focus on, and what would you like to share with our audience today?
Well, in my day job, I work in inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility,
Hmm.
which takes different forms in every country around the world. I was
Yeah.
the deputy chief diversity officer for a global accounting firm, so I had the opportunity to work in 152 countries.
Right.
We have our own definitions. I live in the United States, although I'm originally Canadian. We have our own definitions on this side of the ocean,
Yeah.
but the that really changes where you are in the world. And I think coming back to my opening comment, we're seeing, just looking at the United States, a very authoritarian regime is in power, and they're trying to oppress people. It's not going well, and I don't think it's going to end well for them. But we see this in every country where
Mhm.
difference is sometimes embraced and sometimes not. Think about
Yeah.
China and the Uyghurs. The it is an interesting time, and I think we're going to come out the other side of this with an idea of who we are as a society. And some countries will very much be a an exclusionary environment, and some will be an inclusionary environment.
Mhm. Okay. Now, I don't know if I want to get into the geopolitics and the whole inclusion, but the fact of the matter is that where we are sitting today, it's somewhat easier for us to discuss the situation in the corporate world, be it in the United States or in any other country, right? As you mentioned, that situations are changing. There are different reactions to how people are reacting to diversity and inclusion, equity, right? So from the current state of affairs, right, across the world, I mean, you've been in this for a pretty long time. There's been a huge change, I mean, an ocean level change kind of stuff happening from, I don't know, the 90s to today where we are, right? Uh, what's the best part that you've seen that currently, what's the best part about the current situation right now in the corporate world, if not geopolitics?
Oh, well, I think in the corporate world, what we're seeing is a lot of employers that are pushing back against the anti-DEI movement and saying,
Mhm.
no, Mr. Politician, Miss Politician, you can think whatever you like, but we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Hmm.
and bluntly at each other. They're not doing it because they're the nicest people in the world. They're doing it because it's good for business.
Okay.
They're doing it because it's good for their top and bottom line, because they recognize that, they want to do business in countries like India.
Yeah.
And in order to do business in countries like India, they need to understand India. They need
Yeah.
to employ people from India.
Yeah.
That cultural awareness
Yeah.
needs to be quite high in
Yeah.
order to do business in other countries.
Yes.
And so they're not the nicest people in the world. This isn't because they're really great corporations.
Yeah.
They're just in it for the money. And I'm
Uh-huh.
okay with that.
Um,
Because at the end of the day, if it's good for business, it becomes good for the people. In most cases, there are some situations
of course.
where that isn't the case, but in most situations, people's lives get better because these corporations are trying to make more money.
Uh-huh.
There's a downside to all of that, but that's for another podcast, I think.
Okay, now obviously we will be discussing a lot of what is the good part of it. But yeah, as you mentioned, the extreme or exclusive cases, right, where it does not turn in favor of the companies. If you could highlight that in short, just so we can flip the script and then talk about what's good.
Well, there's lots of instances where companies have done things that have not been in the best interest of human beings.
Hmm.
The environment is one of them.
Okay.
We had, if you it, and this is, you can look this up online, but there was an electric car
Mm.
made in the early 1900s,
Uh-huh.
and the oil industry squashed that car because they didn't want to
Yeah,
lose
yeah,
money.
yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've heard,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. I've
oil
heard that.
is
I've
not
heard.
really great for the environment.
No, I meant,
So,
I thought you were talking about from there were DEI perspective. The company attempted something and then it did not turn out in that favor.
oh, no, nothing I can think of specifically. The benefits far outweigh
Yeah, that's
any cost. Usually when I hear an employer saying, "Oh, we're not going to do that," the next sentence is because it's going to cost too much.
hmm
But and accessibility is one where we hear this a lot, right? Like,
yeah,
oh, we can't
that's
hire people with disabilities because it's going to cost too much.
hmm
What they don't see is the cost benefit. They're not looking at the value that comes with that. But generally speaking, when an employer has a focus on DEI,
hmm
they benefit from that.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk about, obviously there are a lot of good things. Uh,
Yeah.
but if an employer had to look at an investment in DEI initiatives, hiring people of different with differences. So if you had to list one benefit, what would that be?
Just one, I probably would immediately go to lower turnover.
Okay.
Organizations that have a focus on DEI tend to have higher retention rates of employees.
Hmm.
And obviously, the longer a person stays, the the less a company has to spend on replacing that person. And there's huge expenses
Yeah.
related to hiring a person.
Hmm.
There's downtime from not having a person in the role. There's the time it takes to get a new person trained. There's the impact on engagement and morale and all sorts of things. So I would say the immediately that comes to mind is the financial impact of voluntary turnover is quite significant.
Hmm. Okay. Now asked you about what is the best thing that's happening in the corporate world with the DEI situation. Now, what's the baddest
Mm.
thing that's not good with the DEI situation these days?
I would say this whole anti-DEI movement has taken a toll
Hmm.
on employers' willingness to be open and talk about their efforts. So I have a
Okay.
lot of clients that I speak with who say, "Oh yeah, we're still doing the work. We're just not talking about it publicly."
Hmm.
So they've decided that it's not in, and this is in a North American context largely.
Mhm.
They're just not speaking publicly about their efforts.
Mhm.
And the result of that, of course, is other companies are like, well, what's such and such company doing? We haven't heard anything from them lately. So
Yeah.
maybe we should be backing off. And it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy
Mhm.
where companies start to shrink potentially their efforts around DEI. The good news is that most have said, yeah, no, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing, but they're just not talking about it publicly.
Okay. And any effects that you've seen when it comes to hiring, when it comes to hiring in this field, are people cutting down, or is just that just the talk is shut off for a while because the environment as such, non-market force
Yeah,
not in favor?
from a hiring perspective, what's happening is that uh, it's drawing into question the skills of people
Mm-hmm.
who don't look like me. For those of you listening, I'm a white man.
Uh-huh.
And at least in the North American context, and let's call it the Western context, when you talk about the UK and Australia, et cetera, the default is white man.
Yeah.
So anybody who doesn't fit into that mold, it your skills are being drawn into question. They were before, but now more so because employers are really having to think, is this the best person for the job, or am I hiring this person because they're a woman, because they're black, because they're indigenous, because they're Indian? And it's putting more scrutiny on the people who don't look like me.
Uh-huh.
And it, the infamous DEI hire, which is a label that gets placed on people who don't look like me, is a horrible thing to say. It's completely devalues a person's experience
Yeah.
and makes it all about their race, their sex, their gender, their sexuality, whatever.
Mhm.
And that's a real unfortunate outcome that I'm seeing.
Okay. Now, okay, I want to, I just feel like playing the devil's advocate here.
Do it.
So I'll ask you a question from where because I've heard it a lot, right, across companies,
Yeah.
right? Like companies come in and have this quota for fulfilling their diversity targets, right? And then when they go out in the market, they're specifically looking for somebody who's not, say, white male, right? And then anybody who is actually a qualified white male would then go on to say that, yeah, I lost this job because this company is out there just to fulfill their diversity targets. Uh, how do you tackle such a argument?
It's I'm glad you raised it. Like it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah.
Um, so are there companies that have established quotas for hiring people based on a particular characteristic? Absolutely. Do I agree with it? Not even close. I
Mhm.
think establishing a quota system like that, again, takes away from a person's skill set. And that's what we hire people for. We hire them because they have the
That's
skills and experience to do a job, or at least they have the potential to grow into a job.
yes.
That said, when I hear statements like that, people
Mhm.
saying, "Oh, I didn't get the job because, I'm a white man." No, you didn't get the job because you weren't the best candidate. White men, for centuries, have been the only candidate.
That's right. Yeah.
And they're now, the whole DEI world is about merit.
Yes.
When people say it's anti-merit, that's completely the opposite. DEI is about merit. It's about looking at people based on or hiring people based on their skills,
Mhm.
not based on someone's bias in favor or against someone. I always use this is a very old example, but it's a good one. Orchestras. So for many, many, many hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, Orchestras were predominantly white men,
Hmm.
predominantly men, but predominantly white men. And it was believed that women's hands were too delicate to handle instruments because, of course, a flute is very, yeah, you get the sarcasm.
Yeah.
So one day, and I forget, I think it was the Philadelphia orchestra, but I don't quote me on that. They decided to start doing auditions behind a screen
Hmm.
because, of course, the only thing that matters with a musician is what's the music sound like.
Yeah.
Overnight, women got jobs in orchestras where it spiked by like 70%.
Hmm.
Because, of course, I couldn't see you. I could only judge you based on the, the product.
Yeah.
It removes bias from the situation. We all have bias, it's how our brains work.
Hmm.
Sometimes we have bias in favor of something, sometimes we have bias against something.
That's right.
So, in that case, they completely changed the complexion of orchestras because all they were looking was at work product.
Hmm.
So if we could do that in the rest of the world, we would probably see that things changed.
Yeah.
That's not to say that white men don't have skills and qualifications. They absolutely do.
Hmm.
But consider that when you look at the Fortune 500 companies in the United States, the top 500 companies of the world by Fortune magazine,
Hmm.
there are more men on CEOs on that list named John than there are women on that list. Is that to say that women don't have the skills? No. It's to say that there's been so much bias in the system for so long that men named John have had the opportunity to succeed where women did not.
Hmm.
So it's, if a person loses out on a job and they suggest that it's because they're a white man, I would take a really hard look at their skill set
Yeah.
and have an honest conversation. And
Right.
that's not a pleasant thing to say. No one wants to lose.
Yeah.
But I will say that women in particular have been losing out on jobs because they're women
Hmm.
for decades. And now we're just leveling the playing field and focusing on actual merit
Hmm.
rather than focusing on a particular characteristic.
Right. Now, this is a very, I mean, kind of a sensitive topic, right? There are a lot of this side and that side kind of, right? How have you seen this playing out on different platforms like social media? I mean, we are having a civilized conversation here, one to one, right? But then when you go out, there's a whole group, there are different people responding to such questions, or sometimes people just want to respond like this on a random social media post, right?
Yeah.
Uh, how have you seen this play out?
Oh, it's messy. I mean, let's be honest. Social media is just a toxic wasteland.
Yeah.
Um, because people can hide behind their Twitter handles and their Instagram handles, and they feel like they can put things out into the world without any consequence.
Yeah.
And I think that is an incredibly self centered way of looking at things.
Hmm.
I am very thoughtful about every single word I put out into social media.
Hmm.
It wasn't always, but it's certainly the way I am now. When
Yeah.
when social media was new, I was exactly that person who was commenting and saying things without thinking about the impact of those words. Would I say this to a person's face? And that was exactly where I got to was I said, would I say this to a person's face?
Hmm.
And if I wouldn't say it to their face, I'm not putting it on social media.
Yeah.
And I think this conversation on social media is horrible on both sides. Everyone's guilty here.
Hmm.
And we have gotten to a point of very much a divide in
Yeah.
society where
That's.
you're on one side of an ideology or the other. And I just don't live in that world.
Hmm.
It's not black and white for me. It's all shades of gray.
Hmm.
I am not somebody who thinks we should there isn't right or wrong.
Hmm.
And the toxicity of the conversation on social media is just horrible.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to take a breath and really think about what you're saying, and would you say it to someone's face?
Hmm.
And there are some people that, yes, they would say it to your face, and that's fine. That's their choice. I just happen to disagree with that kind of approach.
Hmm.
I practice a level of kindness in life, and I wish everyone did,
Yeah.
because I think what goes around comes around.
Of course.
I believe that if I'm kind to others, others will be kind to me.
Yeah.
And when someone is not kind to me, I believe that they will eventually find a world where people are not kind to them.
That's so true. I mean, yeah, I surely agree to that. I mean, things going around and coming around, right? Now, just a random question. I see two pictures on your background, birds of all feathers, and I think it's alphabet soup. So, if you could
Yep.
just tell the audience what this is about.
Yeah, those are the covers of two of my books: Birds of All Feathers, Doing Diversity and Inclusion Right, and Alphabet Soup, The Essential Guide to LGBTQ2 plus Inclusion at Work. These titles are very long. But they're older books. One came out in 2020, one in 2022,
Mhm.
and my publishers got them framed for me, so I'm able to have them in my constantly staring at me in my office. Whether I want them there or not is irrelevant.
Okay. Now, clip my mind. So LGBTQ plus, right?
Yep.
Now this acronym, I don't know. I think it started with LGBT and then it went to LGBTQ and then now there's plus. Some people also have the LGBTQIA plus. Now, what should people be using? What do you recommend?
Oh my gosh. That is a very loaded question, AG Child, and I'll tell you why. If you ask 1,000 people, you'll get 1,000 answers.
Uh,
Everyone's got an opinion about what acronym or initialism we should be using to describe this community, which is actually a series of communities. Like I talk about this in my book Alphabet Soup, that it's not one community. We're a community of communities.
uh-huh.
The It also changes depending on the country you're in.
Yeah.
So in Canada, they use 2S LGBTQI plus,
Okay.
2S standing for Two Spirit, which is a term used to describe Indigenous people who
Yeah.
are also members of the LGBTQ plus communities. Um, in the media, they use LGBTQ plus.
Uh-huh.
In the United States, we use LGBTQIA plus. So, but at the same time, I say we use it. We is me.
Okay.
Some people will say LGBTQIA plus, and some will just say LGBT,
Yeah.
and some will say LGBTQ. So my recommendation is always this: pick one that is you're most comfortable with,
Hmm.
that you understand what each of the letters or characters in the initialism means.
Hmm.
So if you don't know what the T means, look it up. Make sure you understand those letters. And then whatever you do, just add a plus sign at the end.
Okay.
The intention of the plus sign is to help people understand that there are more identities in this big rainbow community than just those letters.
Yeah.
LGBTQ represents specific identities. And there are so many other identities that aren't represented in that initials and couldn't be, because there's literally hundreds of them.
Hmm.
And we would just be I'd still be saying the initialism. So just the plus sign is always that reminder that it's not just one or two identities, that there's
Right.
lots of different identities.
Okay. And yeah, I don't know. Do you want to spell out all of these just for the audience, just for the sake of
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Of course. It's a good point. So L stands for lesbian, which is a woman, person who identifies as a woman who is romantically, sexually, or emotionally attracted to other women. The G stands for gay, which is a person who identifies as a man who's romantically, sexually, or emotionally attracted to other men. The B stands for bisexual, which is a person of any gender who's attracted to people of more than one gender. The T stands for trans. It historically it stood for transgender, and in fact, some people still use it to describe transgender. But in my world, it got shortened to trans to be an umbrella term to describe anyone who is gender diverse
Okay.
beyond a person who is transgender, which is a very specific identity. The Q stands for queer, which historically has been a pejorative, but it is now used as an umbrella term for people who are sexual minorities or gender minorities, to say, we're all queer. Some people love it, some people do not. It's a bit of a controversial term. I'll describe the I and the A as well. So I stands for intersex, which is a person, and this is not a sexual orientation, nor is it a gender identity. It's a sex assigned at birth. So when the doctor looks down, doctor, nurse, doula, whoever, looks down and says, it's a boy or it's a girl, they are assigning a sex to you, male and female. But there is a third sex that you can be born, intersex, which is a person who is born with some combination of both male and female sex characteristics. About 1% of babies are born intersex. However, most of those characteristics are invisible, so you won't be able to see them. So a lot of children do go undiagnosed as intersex. And then the A stands for any number of things. Usually it is asexual
Mhm.
or aromantic, agender, which is a person who doesn't identify as having a sexual orientation, a gender, or romantic attraction. So there's people who have no romantic attraction, no sexual attraction. Sometimes you'll also hear the term ace, ACE, like
Okay.
an ace in a card deck.
Yeah.
And that is meant to be an umbrella term for the A genders, aromantic and asexual.
Okay. Yeah, I
It's a
was
lot of information, a, a lot.
yeah, actually this ace was actually new. I was somewhere there. Like, okay, you every day you get to learn something new. So
Young people, they come up with new words.
okay, okay. Now, since you brought young people into the conversation,
Yeah.
how do you feel about the new next Gen Zs that are coming into the community? How are they responding?
Well, I mean, from a DEI perspective, the Gen Z community, Gen Z community, they are very much pro DEI.
Hmm.
This is a generation, and not universally, but the majority, generation that grew up with so much information that they don't understand why we have biases.
Hmm.
Um, you know, my niece grew up with an incredibly diverse group of kids and
Hmm.
watching an incredibly diverse world on television, on the internet.
Hmm.
So when it comes to things like racism and sexism and homophobia, she doesn't have any time for it. She just thinks that's silly and we're
Yeah.
old people.
Hmm.
Um, you know, when we talk about sexuality, she's like, I may like girls, I may like boys. Okay, great, whatever. The that generation is and the younger generations are very much not going to tolerate what we're seeing today. Obviously, there are some members of that generation that they've learned their racism well. They've learned their sexism and homophobia from their parents and their grandparents very well.
Uh-huh.
But it's, with every generation, the shift comes, right?
Yeah.
We move along. I'm not going to say we move left or we move right. That's not, it's not, this isn't about politics. We evolve.
Yeah.
And every generation evolves. My generation evolved
Hmm.
beyond my parents' generation. My, my kids' generation evolves past mine, in terms of our acceptance, in terms of our embracing of different things. But I think I think once the baby boomer generation is completely out of power,
Hmm.
which will happen in the next 10 years,
Hmm.
and my generation, I'm a Gen X. Once my generation starts to really retire, which has already started, but we're early days,
Yeah.
we're going to see a massive shift
Hmm.
because millennials and Gen Z or Gen Z, sorry, I'm a Canadian living in the United States, so I say that two ways. They're going to be in positions of power and they're simply not going to tolerate
Yeah.
the discrimination, the bias. It'll still exist in part, but it's, I think maybe within my lifetime, I will still see this massive shift away from the habits and patterns that we see today.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. I mean, we've done all different directions. You went to the corporate world. We talked a little about geopolitics, I know. But yeah, we talked about Gen Z and then all about LGBTQIA plus. So thank you so much for joining in. Before we close, where can people get in touch with you and how can they know more about you?
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me. Everyone, you can find me at my website at michaelbach.com. That's Bach, like the composer. Or you can find me on social media. I am at the Michael Bach.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks for joining me in on this episode. To the audience who's been watching and listening, if you liked what we talked about, do leave a like. The comment section is open for perspectives, questions, suggestions, and anything else you want to write down on. And don't forget to subscribe before you close the window itself. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much. Thanks, Michael. Yeah,
Thank
one
you.
more question before we close. Just want to
Mm.
know your opinion about this platform. If there's a platform where you have brands and an influencer, okay, influencers and brands coming together on a marketplace to collaborate, right? What would be your opinion of such a platform? Like you are kind of an influencer and somebody wants to reach out to you for a proper collaboration, like brand or company, something of that sort.
Yeah, I've never done any sort of collaborations. I haven't felt like it was part of my brand.
Yeah.
But let's recognize that the influencer world it's a thing. And, I think a lot of influencers are trying, particularly ones that don't have as big a
Mm.
platform, are trying to find those opportunities to partner. And a lot of advertisers are trying to find opportunities to engage with influencers. So if something like that existed or does exist, I think it's probably a good thing.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. Thanks for this. Thanks for your opinion. Thank you so much, Michael.
My pleasure. My